Good afternoon. I am Dr. Nsenga Burton, and I would like to welcome you to the Burton Wire and Black Press USA's live stream today, discussing a very important matter: misinformation in social media as it relates to health issues in the African American community. Today, my guests are Dr. Delmonte Jefferson, who is the Executive Director of the Center for Black Health and Equity. And I have Dr. Corey Hebert, who is an assistant professor at LSU and Tulane. That's how awesome Dr. Hebert is. And also a media expert and a medical media expert and a chief medical officer for many different organizations, including the Black News Channel and others. Today, I'd like to welcome them so they can talk about um, this wonderful initiative called the truthcheck.org. That's the truthcheck.org. Welcome, fellas.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
I'm so glad you all are here. So glad to meet you finally in person because we have been in conversation and on lots of email threads. Okay,
Mm.
so first of all, I would love to hear about the truthcheck.org. Exactly. Tell me exactly what the truthcheck.org is and what is your or what was is your motivation for creating such a necessary website and campaign to tackle misinformation in social media as it relates to issues that impact us.
Well, thanks for having me, Nsenga. And also, I'm not a doctor, by the way. Just wanted to
Mm.
put that out there, so I'm accused of using false titles. But the Truth Check is a campaign led by us at the Center for Black Health and Equity, and what it does is provide social media literacy training to African American audiences. And so, this training, we're trying to help users build the fact checking skills necessary to detect misinformation, particularly pertaining to the COVID-19 vaccine. And so we know that there's a lot of misinformation out there. We know that there's disinformation
Yeah.
out there. And so oftentimes people are like,
Mhm.
well, how do I know what's real and what's not real? Well, the Truth Check, and what it does is it helps you to build skills so that you can know, or at least feel more confident that you've got accurate information.
Okay. So, can I ask a follow up question real quick before I get to you, Dr. Abear? So, Del
Sure.
Monte, can you tell viewers the difference between misinformation and disinformation? Because I think sometimes people are confused about that.
Yeah. That's a very good question. Misinformation is more, well, you've just got your facts wrong. All right. It could be an honest mistake, but the information that you have isn't accurate or is it used correctly? And so, when I think about misinformation, I'll think about sometimes there's information out there that, in the COVID vaccine, in order to get the COVID vaccine, you've got to get COVID. They're going to put COVID in the COVID vaccine. Well, that's
Right.
misinformation. That there's not truth to that. And if you go out and look at trusted sources, you can find that out. That's misinformation. Disinformation is when information is intentionally put out there to really kind of confuse audiences as to the reality of the situation. And so that's the difference there. You've got it's an honest mistake. You just got it wrong. But this is done intentionally for other ulterior purposes and motives.
Okay, very good. So, Dr. Abear, what specifically have you been seeing in the medical community regarding misinformation as it relates to COVID and how it is impacting negatively or positively African American communities?
Yeah. Well, what we know is that as this whole concept started of this pandemic, let's just start from scratch here. We never really had the ability to have disinformation or misinformation in our communities before the advent of the internet. Now, the internet is a great tool. It is a really awesome way to get information. I mean, there's really no reason why you should ever say I don't know, because all you gotta do is Google it and you'll know theoretically. But the,
Yes.
but the problem is the reason why there was no disinformation and misinformation before internet is because where are you gonna get it from? What are you gonna do? Go to the library? What are you gonna do? Go sit in the medical library and look it up? right? So that just didn't exist. So with the advent of the internet, we knew that this was going to be a real issue as far as medicine, because what happened really is that people started coming to my office when the internet came about, and they would say, hey, I have chest pain, and I have some pain in my left arm, so I think I'm having a heart attack. I actually looked it up on Dr. Google, and Dr. Google said that this is what I had. So they would come to me with the symptoms and tell me what they wanted me to do about it. Okay. So this whole concept is something that a lot of younger people don't even understand didn't exist before the advent of the internet, right? So what we have seen throughout this COVID-19 pandemic is the fact that we, at 2 months old, a child will get 5 to 6 vaccines. I'm talking about a baby, 5 to 6 vaccines. And African Americans, we had some of the highest immunization rates in the country, right? And then the COVID-19 vaccine came out, and everybody decided they don't want to get the COVID vaccine. And it was an irrational concept as to why. Meaning, they said it was rushed. Well, rushed according to whom? What are you using as your yardstick by which you measure something being rushed? You're not a scientist, so you don't know what rushed means. You don't know about all the vaccines that you've taken in your life. Have they all taken this long? Where did you get this information? How many people have to have been in a study for you to think it's valid? How long does the study have to last? So these are the types of things are misinformation, because people just were scared. And by and large, people just don't like to take shots. I mean, we can get to that in a minute, but people don't like it. So when they're scared about something, it's very easily, some misinformation is easily implanted in someone's head when they don't want to do something, because it just makes it easier for them to not do it, right? So what we have seen is that over this whole concept of COVID-19, when it came from a quote unquote, because this is something that I hear, I'm not saying this is what I feel, but a regime like the Trump organization, okay? So when Black people got wind that this thing started, and then Donald Trump is one of the people they didn't necessarily trust, then that's what started this whole concept of, I don't trust any of the stuff that the government is doing against COVID-19, because I don't trust the quote unquote, I don't trust the government. And so once that came out, it just set the wheels in motion from Black people can't get COVID-19, which was the first misinformation. Idris Elba had to come out and get his mind right about that, because a lot of people came out and said that Black people can't get it. And there's a lot of our people that we use as our role models, like athletes, entertainers, who are not scientists, came out and said that Black people couldn't get it. And then after that, then they came out with the vaccine is going to kill Black people. And then everything has come out. And then what we saw after that, well, actually before the vaccine will kill everybody, Black people, is that Black people were dying at disproportionate rates, which was true, right? So at that point, we knew we had to do something. And that's where, when the barrage of information came out on the internet about the vaccines, about COVID-19, the myths, and everything like that, that just kind of washed the entire internet from real things. It just made ignorance something that's just across the board. And when I say ignorance, I'm not calling us ignorant, because we are very smart people. It's just that when you see things that are not true, you don't know if it's real or not, and you spread it. And the onus on our people and our community, we are the truth tellers. We are the leaders. We are the influencers. And when I say that, I don't mean myself and Mr. Delmonte here. I'm talking about you as a person in your home. You are the influencer. So if you just get information off the internet and spread it to people in your church, or get information off the internet and spread it to your friends without verifying it in a way that you know is actually real, you're doing harm. You're doing real harm. And that's what this whole organization and this push is about.
Yeah, I mean, excellent. I mean, I'm a media scholar, just so that you all know. So my area of expertise is film, TV, and new media. So this issue of misinformation and disinformation, like literally targeting particular groups with misinformation in order to have certain outcomes, is real and legitimate. And so the truthcheck.org is really about helping people to discern, right? To have some discernment, to be able to tell, or to kind of get those skills that they need, as you say, Delmonte, to have that media literacy so that they can make better decisions about what they should be taking or not. But I want to circle back to the point that you raised, Dr. Hebert, and get Delmonte's perspective on it. Some people were saying, the vaccine has clearly been politicized. So regardless of where you fall on the political spectrum, it has been politicized. And so a lot of what Dr. Hebert has been saying about people saying Black people can't get it, people saying that the vaccine is going to kill Black people, it's not real. You can take this horse serum and it'll knock it out, or what have you. A lot of that actually came from people who were high profile in government entities, and as you said, celebrities or what have you. What other examples can you give us? Because the Tuskegee experiment is often held up as a reason why Black people shouldn't trust vaccines, even though there's been a large push by the descendants of those from the Tuskegee experiment to get people to take this vaccine. Can you talk to our viewers who may be hesitant because of our problematic history with the government, the politicization of health as it relates to our community? How do you get them off the bubble? How do you get them off the bubble, Delmonte?
Well, that's a very interesting point that you raise. You've got us saying that, when you do your media literacy, when you get social media savvy, you need to look at trusted sources. You need to use your own intelligence and know how to look at trusted sources. And one of the trusted sources that we list, of course, and that you're going to think about is the government. But when the government itself, is politicized, and you're thinking that the government itself is putting out misinformation or disinformation, that becomes very hard. And so you really need to learn how to find other sources, other trusted sources that you can look at and that you can refer to. Other, medical institutions, HBCU medical institutions, if that's the case. The Tuskegee experiment is valid. It's a concern that you should have. And we're not saying just discard it and say, oh, everything is fine with the government. We're saying, well, use that. Think about it. Use some common sense, use some reason, and think about it and say, well, wait a minute. Yes, what they did was wrong. But this vaccine that they're putting out, they're not just putting this out with Black people. When we think about the Tuskegee experiment that happened with Black people, this vaccine that they're putting this out not just across this country, but across the world. And so you have to say to yourself, when you're using common sense, oh, well, wait a minute now, this vaccine is not just for Black people. This vaccine is for everybody, just like we talked about with smallpox or influenza. This vaccine is for everybody. So common sense is going to say, obviously, this vaccine is going to work. And so, again, the social media piece, what Dr. Hebert said, with the internet, everything is out there. You can find anything and everything on the dark web. You can find anything and everything. In fact, you can find anything that tickles your ear. So whatever you want to hear, you can find it on the internet. And so the thing is, how do you actually look for the truth? Not just what you want to hear, not just for what you already believe, not just what you already thought, or not just what, Nate done told you, but how do you try and find the truthful information that's also out there?
I'd like to piggyback.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Dr.
I'd like to piggyback on that because I just want to put this out there because a lot of people don't really know this. What was the Tuskegee experiment? And I want people to really understand this because they say that. And the Tuskegee experiment, it was something that was egregious. It was one of the most egregious things that has ever happened in the United States to African Americans. But it is not the most egregious. And there are hundreds of things that are more egregious if you really want to start looking at it. And there's a book that's out there that really talks about this. This whole the way that the United States government has really tried to destroy "quote unquote" African Americans with the medical system it's called medical apartheid. Okay, so it's a really good book. You should look at it. But what happened in Tuskegee is the men had a disease. Men had syphilis. Black men had syphilis, and there was a cure for syphilis, which was penicillin. And they did not give the men the cure, so no one was injected with anything in the Tuskegee experiment. Nobody. the treatment was withheld from African Americans, which is just as bad. Don't get me wrong, but I just want people to understand there was no vaccine involved. There was no injection of syphilis in Black people. They withheld the treatment so that they could see what would happen over time, so that we could know what actually would, if you had syphilis for 20 years, would it kill you? And what the thing that made this experiment so bad is that it did kill the men, because now we know that if you don't treat syphilis, it will kill you, because it will give you neurosyphilis in your brain and you'll die, right? So that is a horrible, horrible thing for us to have been guinea pigs for. However, that's not this. And I tell Black folks more than anything in the world, and Delmonte said it best. Look, if rich white people are doing something, you should probably do it. I'm saying, it's just if rich white people are doing something, you should do it. If you could go to Whole Foods every day and buy organic broccoli, rich white people do that. You should do that. If rich white people go to college, you should do that. But I mean, when we in our community, Black folks, we wouldn't go get the vaccine in our community, and white people were coming to our community and stealing the vaccine. And that should let Black people know with common sense that, hey, if they're trying to get it and they're coming to our community to steal it, this has to be something that is maybe it's not good, but it's not just not going to be good for Black folks. It ain't going to be good for anybody if that's the case. And we know that that's not the case.
That's right. So it's like when the world catches a cold, Black folks get pneumonia, like those kind of adages. Yeah, and seriously, I can't even tell you how many white folks, my colleagues and friends called me and were like, "Where are you getting this vaccine? How are you getting it? How do I get it?" Because they really wanted it to get it. And then you have folks where you're calling them like, "Hey, you can get this vaccine." And Black folks are like, "Nah, I don't think so." Lorraine Lathan, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, Miss Lorraine, says Henrietta Lacks, whose cancer cells were taken in 1951 without her or her family's permission and used in cancer research and treatment, is an excellent example of why our people mistrust the government. Yes, Lorraine, you are correct. Henrietta Lacks is a woman originally born in Virginia. She went to Baltimore to get treatment, and her cells were taken without her knowledge or her permission. They were hidden in plain sight. HeLa cells. HE was Henrietta, LA was Lax, and they have been used for a number of medical and biological experiments, and really amazing amazing outcomes. And so she has been her estate has been embattled for a long time trying to right that wrong. So you are correct. That is an example. But I do like that Dr. Hebert really make sure that we are clear that about what happened, because what happens with media, because there's so much of it, right? We're in a mediated society. You're constantly inundated with all types of information, the good information, which we call validated information, right? Information that's passed through the lenses of people who are actually educated and who are have the education that we need in order to assess whether what is happening, whether what needs to happen happens, right? So, for example, the CDC prior to the Trump administration used to give a daily press briefing, which a lot of people didn't know. So they would do a daily press briefing. That's how you would know what was coming up. I live in Atlanta, so this is how I know this. And I work at Emory. But then that was stopped, right? And then we had all of this kind of misinformation coming out, and there was no body that was present to really counter the misinformation, because they had those platforms. So, to get back to the truthcheck.org, what are the ways that the truthcheck.org is making sure that people can have the level of discernment, can know the difference between, what they read in the streets, what I call it, and what is valid. What are you all doing to make sure that people know that? And we'll start with Delmonte.
Well, I think Dr. Hebert said earlier, Black communities are major cultural influencers. Okay, we're going to set the tone, whether it's the latest dance you're going to see on TikTok, or the best places to eat in town, or where to go hear some real good jazz music, or whatever it is. We're going to set the tone on that. We're influencers. So it's not only important, that our influencers get it right, but it's equally important that we have the confidence and the skills for engaging with social media. So you got to be careful. Otherwise, social media will rule you. I saw on the news the other day, they had a young boy who was given $1,800 by his mother because he stayed off of social media for like
Exactly.
6 years. And so she paid him to stay off of social media. It is an issue. It is a problem. It's a problem at work. It's a problem at home. It's a problem at church. You can go to church and folks are on their phones looking at social media. What is the pastor saying? And so social media is something. So when we're always inundated with social media, we need to be careful. We need to be confident that social media isn't going to rule us, that we have control over the social media. And so what the Truth Check does, truthcheck.org, you got to go there. It helps to build that confidence, and that social media confidence in the skills for engaging, that at the end of the day, that you're not just going to tell me anything and I'm going to have to believe it and I'm going to walk away with it. And so we also have we're working with some of these cultural influencers so that they can actually put information out, encourage folks, not telling you what's right and wrong. That's the key thing. They're not going to say this is right or this is wrong. We're going to say you need to be able to discern for yourself, because that's going to help you, whether it's COVID-19, what we have right now, whether it's menthol cigarettes, which is something that we also work on. And there's all this misinformation and disinformation on menthol cigarettes, whether it's the whole fact that HIV/AIDS is a Black disease, and only Black people are getting it. So all this misinformation and disinformation, what you got to have is those skills necessary to say, well, this sounds right, this doesn't sound right. And if it doesn't sound right, I'm going to give it a side eye. I'm going to say, well, wait a minute, let me look at these other sources. And so that's the beauty of the truthcheck.org. It's helping us right now in COVID, but it's going to help us in other cases as well.
Excellent. Dr. Hebert, what are your thoughts on what are the skills that people need in order to make these assessments, particularly about health and about this COVID-19 vaccine and the other issues that that Delmonte referenced? I just want to call you Dr. Delmonte. Okay, I got to get it out.
I'm
Delmonte.
having a little
Okay,
bit of problems hearing you right now. Can you still
can
hear
you
me?
hear me now?
Yes.
I can hear you fine.
Okay.
Fantastic. Okay, so my question
I could not
is,
hear the question, so we need to maybe bounce back to Delmonte real quick. I don't know actually what, if you can still hear me, there must be something wrong on my end. I'm actually in the Northeast and we have a huge snowstorm right now, so I'm concerned that we might have a little bit of an issue. Let me see here. You can ask, if you can go and ask Mr. Delmonte a question. Hold on one second. Let me see if I can adjust this here.
okay, I'll go back to Mr. Delmonte. So when we talk about concrete steps with the truthcheck.org, let's take me to the truthcheck.org. I'm just a person. I see your all fabulous marketing materials and it's all over the web. And I go to the truthcheck.org. What am I going to see when I get there? And what do I need to know in order to get the most out of the truthcheck.org?
Well, the first thing is,
Delmonte.
when you go to the website, the truthcheck.org, it's going to be relatable. You're going to immediately say, wow, I can relate to this. You're going to see images, you're going to see visuals. And that's because we work with other African-American organizations to create the website, to develop the content. We did work with Guidehouse. The Guidehouse helped us to get information, just misinformation on COVID-19 that had been coming out and that had been on the internet. But again, our job, our task was not to correct all the misinformation out there, but just to use it as a guide as to, can I get social media savvy in order to look at different sources and counter disinformation? So that's the one thing that we really were glad that we did, and I'm sure our communities are glad, is that we made it relevant. We made it relevant to Black folks. We made it relevant to African Americans, because we actually went out and
I still have no audio.
Organizations.
Okay, so I'm going to keep going with you, Norman. Yeah.
I still have no audio. I can see you guys just fine. You look great, by the way, but I can't hear you. Okay.
Now, one other thing, if I could, just a little bit briefly about our organizations. What we do, the Center for Black Health and Equity, we facilitate different programs and services to promote health justice for communities and people of African descent. Now, we do this by building community capacity and developing infrastructure within African American communities so that they can successfully advocate for policies centered in equity. And we've been providing these services to African American communities for more than 20 years now. And we've had our fair share of misinformation during this time. I talked about the marketing of menthol. I talked about that, for example, there's information out there, and it's complete misinformation, and some level of it is disinformation that we hear even from other African Americans about we shouldn't try and ban menthol because it's something that we like. Now that's misinformation. Or that it's going to criminalize Black people. That's misinformation. That's disinformation. But it's out there. It's out there in our communities. And so what we have to do is we have to counter that information and say, well, no, this is, we're trying to save lives. This is for saving lives and for nothing more than that. And so, the spread of misinformation hurts our communities. That's one thing. But the key thing, a takeaway point I want to make, this is at home. This misinformation can happen at home. I've been doing public health work now for almost half my life. For half my life, I've been doing public health work. My kids grew up with me doing public health work, but yet my own son, I have a son that has been captured by the information in the dark web, has not taken the COVID vaccine. His family hasn't taken the COVID vaccine because he's heard some misinformation that it's just stuck. It's just in him. And truth checking hasn't gotten out. I've sent him to truthcheck.org. I've walked him through it. I gave him the trusted sources. But once that misinformation got in his head, it's there. It's like it's ingrained. And it's the hardest thing to get out. And so this is real. This hits home. And it doesn't matter who you are. You can be affected by it.
I'm actually back. Yes,
okay,
Dr. Yes, I just kind of wanted to piggyback because I could see what was going on. Your points, Delmonte, were so valid. It makes so much sense what you're saying, because basically what happens is, I'm going to give you a prime example of how truthcheck.org could have really made a difference. Ivermectin, okay? Ivermectin is a medicine that I have used for 25 years to treat people that had worms. Okay, when I say worms, that means we have parasites in our bodies, right? It's a great drug. But what happened is that people started saying that this medicine could actually help with COVID-19, which is something that actually could have been the case, because there are lots of medicines that we use for other things that actually help with other things, right? So that's something that's not out of the realm of reality. So all you have to have is a piece of truth in something for people to really kind of hold on to it, because the issue is people do take ivermectin, and ivermectin is a good drug. So let's just say right now, I just said people take ivermectin. Ivermectin is a good drug. People right now could take that snippet, that what I just said, and put it on anything and say Dr. Hebert says that ivermectin is a good drug. That's not the whole truth, though. Okay, truth is important. So ivermectin has never ever been proven in a peer reviewed, and these are the words that you need to always have in your mind when you start looking at information. Peer reviewed, meaning that other doctors have looked at this information. Okay, published, that's right. Meaning that this information was published, and it was published in a reputable journal. Okay, also it was placebo controlled, meaning that some people took a sugar pill, some people took the real pill. At the end of the day, which group actually had a good outcome? Because placebo effect is a really important thing, because 30% of the time, if you took a sugar pill, it would work. That's how strong our mind is, right? So you got placebo controlled. You want it to be double blind, meaning that the people that are in that study, you don't want either one of those people, whether the person that's given them the medicine or the person that's taken the medicine, you don't want either of those people to know whether they're getting the sugar pill or the real thing, because they can actually change the information outcome by saying, I know that this is the sugar pill and I know this is the real pill, so I'm going to give this real pill to this person and this sugar pill to the other person. You got to have it double blind. So what are those words? Placebo controlled, peer reviewed, double blind. Those are the things that you have to look for, because this is where I'm getting to. Ivermectin, about 3 weeks ago, there was a study that came out to say ivermectin actually helped and was good in the treatment of COVID-19, and that it prevented death. That was the headline. Okay, I posted this because I want people to know. If you read down in that piece of information that was sent out by Reuters, by the way, Reuters, which is a very reputable thing, Reuters said at the end of that paragraph, it said, this data was retrieved from a study that was not done on human beings and was not peer reviewed. It was not done with the clinical aspects of the scientific method. So if you
Why would
read
Reuters
that,
of all places run something like that? Like Reuters is a what we would call a legitimate news agency. It's a leading news agency. It's an international news agency. Go ahead.
exactly.
I'm like shocked.
And what happened is that they had to do a retraction, but you cannot unfire a cannon. You can't unfire that cannon. So right now, everybody I knew that said, see, ivermectin works. I got all these text messages, ivermectin works. So I had to take a screenshot, circle where it said this was not a clinical study on human beings, and to circle the Reuters retraction and put that on my Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and say, this is why you have to have something like truthcheck.org, because you have to be able to understand that just because a headline says something, it doesn't mean that this is real. And so when you start looking at truthcheck.org, when you go to get this training, at the end of the day, when you read that headline, you will have learned that you cannot just read a headline. There's checkpoints. There's check marks that you have to say. Before I tell my family that ivermectin works, it has to meet these criteria. Check, 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 check. And if it doesn't meet this criteria, I should not open my mouth to my family, my church members, or anybody else about this mis or disinformation, because all it takes is one piece of truth to fuel that entire concept. And that is what we have to get away from, because most of the stuff that's out there, it's not just blatantly wrong. It's implicit wrongness. And so if you could just feel that, just like your son, Delmonte, I mean, he's your son, but he has gotten to this point where he said there's some implicit rightness in something that he heard. So he's going to hold on to that little piece as opposed to the totality of what he's heard. And that is, it's the problem.
So we have LaTroya Gant Hester, who's one of our viewers, and she is doing a great job of breaking down some of the things that we should be doing. One of the things that she said was, that's why you have to read beyond the headline, right? And that's what Dr. Hebert is talking about. The first thing she said was practice click restraint. Don't click on everything you see. Number 2, read beyond the headline. Don't share before you actually read the whole article. Number 3, read laterally. Don't just scroll when you're online. Open tabs across the screen and fact check everything. So, these are some very clear guidelines, and these are things that are obviously outlined clearly on the truthcheck.org. But can we talk a little bit about this kind of anti-intellectualism that is happening across the world, but certainly in the U.S. to such an extent that people believe that if they read it online, that even their doctor, in the case of Delmonte, their dad, who is in this work of Black health and equity, can we talk about the extent that anti-intellectualism in the world community and in general, and our community specifically, impacts our willingness to believe misinformation, and what can be done about it?
Yeah, I could address that. As a physician, I mean, I have articles published in the New England Journal of Medicine on COVID-19 right now. So when I say that to someone, that should carry some weight, right? But this is an anecdote I'll tell you. So I have one of my postmen, my mailman, right? I'm talking about this concept, this COVID-19 concept at this gathering with a bunch of intellectuals. And my mailman comes up to me and he's like, hey, doc, I mean, you're talking all that stuff about that COVID-19, but I did my research, man. I'm not taking that COVID-19 vaccine, man. That's bad, blah, 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 blah. And I said, you did your research. Where'd you do this research? He said, I went on the internet and I did my research. And in my mind, the egoism of this concept that you have the control, I think that is what's fueling this anti-intellectualism. Because what I explained to him is I said, look, Mr. Mailman, I love you. You've been my mailman for 14 years. But do you know how many times in 14 years, I have 4 numbers on my house, 1718. How many times have I gotten the wrong mail in my box? How many times? A lot of times, right? have I ever gone on the internet and Googled how to read 4 numbers and then came to you and said, look, man, let me explain to you. I know more about putting mail in boxes than you. So I'm going to explain to you how to read 4 numbers because I saw it on the internet. And then that's how you put the mail in my box. When I said that to him, something clicked in him, because the concept of you are telling me about virology and you have no idea about virology. But what this little phone does to you, or this internet, what it does to you, it empowers you that you are finally in control of things that you may not have been controlling. And I personally think all of this stuff is going to be the downfall of our community. Because when you look at this, I mean, like, I'll give you another example. When there's people that post, people want to be adored, they want to be loved. People post things that they do illegal on the internet, knowing that they're going to get liked by it, but knowing that they're going to go to jail for it. They want to be liked more than anything else. They want their views to be up. They want to be adored. And people want that. And that's what drives it. There's a movie called The Social Dilemma, and I want everyone to see it because it actually breaks down. It's a documentary on how the internet manipulates us, and it's done on purpose. It's done on purpose. So I say that when we talk about the intellectualization, what has happened is that it made everyone else who didn't do the work to become a therapist or a physician or a nurse or anybody that didn't do the work, it gave them the power to say that they have that same information that all those people have, so they can read too. So they can make those decisions too. And just because you can read something doesn't mean that you understand it. Doesn't mean that. And that's why you have to check your ego at the door to say, you should stick to what you know and let the people that do what they do, let them do that. And I'm gonna give one more point, but I think let Delmonte say, there's the concept, and you could tell your son this. I helped promote and help develop the meningitis vaccine for meningitis B. Okay, this was an outbreak about 9 years ago that was going across the colleges in the country, and it was killing children, okay, killing college students. And we had to come up with, after we did our contact tracing, this is nothing new. We do this all the time in medicine. We had to do our contact tracing, then we had to do an emergency use authorization for this vaccine. We had this vaccine from in the research lab to in people's arms in less than a year. Have you heard anything about it? It's a mandatory vaccine. People take it every day to go to college. Nobody even talked about it. You know why? Because people are doing their job, doing their business, and not sitting at home bored thinking about, oh, let me figure out what I can do today. Maybe I can check out what the FDA does every day. Maybe I can check out how vaccines go to market. All these things they didn't look at, they didn't think about in any way, shape, or form, because they were doing what they do. They were doing their jobs. Let us do our jobs, because this vaccine has saved millions of people, and nobody even knows that it was just as fast as the COVID-19. So when your son said this vaccine was rushed, tell him the vaccine he took before he went to college, that was rushed too, and he didn't have anything else to say about it. You see? This is fact.
That's fact.
Right. That's right. And we have a question. It was the name of the documentary, Dorian McGee, is The Social Dilemma, and it's available. I think I just showed it to my class, so I think it's still on Netflix. I think
on Netflix.
Right. Then you have Lorraine Lathan, Dr. Hebert. You are speaking the truth. Thank you. We have LaTroya, Gant, Hester again. Everyone has an agenda, and some are just chasing likes. So we have to ask who created this content, and are they a credible source? So piggybacking off of that question, because my next question for you is, and Delmonte, I'm coming to you. Go ahead, Delmonte, and then I'll ask that question.
I just wanted to also echo what Dr. Hebert was saying. Now, when you talk about the anti-intellectual, add to that that for 4 years, we had coming from the White House a trusted government source, misinformation after misinformation after disinformation intentionally. Now that's a problem. So when I'm already feeling such a way, and then the government itself is giving me incorrect information, they're giving me incorrect. At some point, I'm going to feel like I have to go out and get information on my own. I'm going to have to go out and get my own information and find out for myself what's real, because everything that's coming from the podium, from the press secretaries or from whoever, is false. It's riddled with just falsehoods. And so, so yes, we're in a place right now as a result of that to where no one's going to believe anything that anyone says. So what we have to look at, you've got to look at, again, this is the whole thing about the truthcheck.org. You've got to look at data for yourself. You got to look at deaths. People are dying from COVID. People are dead. We have lost loved ones from COVID. That is a fact, and so you don't say, well, that's misinformation. People really didn't die, because everybody here, everybody on this call, everybody knows somebody who has died from COVID. And those people could be close, very close to you. We've got kids that are growing up with parents. We've got parents going through life without kids. And so you've got all of this that's happening. That's real. And that's not misinformation. And so you need to be able to look at those facts for yourself and then discern.
Can I throw another thing out there? Oh, I'm sorry. I want to piggyback on them about that. And the reason why,
I'm cracking up. Like y'all are rolling. Go ahead. Go ahead, Dr. Hebert.
It's real. It's a very real situation that we're dealing with here, because when you look at the folks that are putting this content out, they are trying to, even your family members, they just want to have the likes too. And be very clear about that. Your family members are out there. They want people to look at their stuff too. And so that's why they are putting some of this stuff out, because, people want that. They want that. And so as we move forward, we have to always remember that as this information flows through, you have to make some decisions. And your decisions have to be based on science, and they have to be, and this may not be a scientific thing. This could be about disinformation on, I see things out there about automobiles. You need to make sure you change your oil and use your oil and it's so many miles because of such and such and such. That could cause problems in your life as well, because there's a study out there that really tells you whether you need to change your oil at that amount of time. So this is really just not about medicine. This is about anything. And the truthcheck.org is important about this. This is about anything that's on the internet, how you can discern whether this is real or not, because all of it is going to affect you. And one more thing. Once someone, we want to empower you as well as a person that, because you're going to go out and you're going to talk about, hey man, truthcheck.org, this is great. And there's going to be somebody out there that's going to say, they're just, saying this is that they just want to push their agenda. You're going to have that. So you also have to remember that when you look at the issues of data points coming out, right? You, with truthcheck.org, we're going to give you the ability so that you can knock down some of these theories, because once someone starts saying conspiracy theories, it's hard to argue with someone like that. And you don't want to be arguing out there because it can cause a lot of problems. But I just want you to think about this. If I tell you, okay, you should take the vaccine, right? And then somebody says, well, the vaccine is killing people. Okay, well, I don't feel the vaccine is killing people. Where do you get that information? Well, it was on the internet, but they took it down. Or the CDC is no longer telling us. CDC is lying, and they're not telling us how many people died from the COVID-19, from the vaccine. Then all bets are off at that point almost, because you cannot argue or try to give truth to someone who believes in a conspiracy theory. And that's why you have to go to truthcheck.org and be trained so that you can have in your arsenal the ability to debunk these things when people come back at you, because you can just go out and start saying things that are true and saying that's not true, that's not true. But people are going to confront you. And you need to be able to discern what's real and be able to talk about this, because it is for the health of your family, financially, emotionally, intellectually. It's not just about medicine. It's about everything that's on the internet right now.
All right, so who is behind truthcheck.org, the truthcheck.org? Because you all are saying, making some incredible statements, and it's wonderful. But of course, it leads us to this question, because people are going to say, and this is what Dr. Hebert is talking about, why should someone believe what they see on the truthcheck.org? I mean, I've seen your bios. I know what the Center for Black Health and Equity does, and that very long history of servicing African American communities in lots of different areas. But why should someone who goes to the truthcheck.org believe what you are training them to do?
Well, again,
Delmonte.
all right. It's almost like if I'm training you to eat, how to use your fork and spoon. I'm not telling you what to eat. You can eat what you like. I'm just telling you how to use a fork and a spoon. The truthcheck.org does that. It teaches you how to discern the truth for yourself. We're not telling you what the truth is. We're not telling you get the vaccine or don't get the vaccine. We're telling you to go out and check what it is that you've heard for yourself. So check the facts. And so that's what the truth check is going to do. And there can't be nothing wrong with wanting to know how to hold the fork the right way, use the fork the right way, and how to use the spoon. And so there can't be anything wrong with knowing how to use truthcheck.org.
It's a very good point.
Mm-hmm,
And I'd like to piggyback on that because, that's one of the bigger things, that when people start feeling like, these things are from the government or from a pharmaceutical company and all these types of things, all these, these things that kind of dissuade you from believing some information because of the ability for other foreign or domestic folks to say things that are not true, right? So you feel concerned that people are lying to you. We're not telling you to believe anything. We're telling you how can you figure out the truth, your own truth. But when you look at this in a way that makes the most sense, this is how you have to look at it. Just like with the ivermectin story. We didn't tell you to take ivermectin or not on truthcheck.org. We're not going to tell you to take it. We're going to tell you to say, was the study that was done to say ivermectin worked, was it double-blind, placebo-controlled, and peer-reviewed in a journal? And you are going to say, that's a checkbox. I'm going to go to that. And when you go to it, you're going to say, guess what? It's not. Boom, there's the truth. We don't tell you what to do at all. We just give you the tools. And I think Delmonte said it perfectly with, the fork and the spoon. I'm not going to tell you what to eat. You can eat whatever you want. You shouldn't be eating a lot of salt. You shouldn't be drinking soda. I will tell you that. But, because sugar, we talk about cocaine is the thing that's killing the white powder that's killing communities. Nah, bro. Sugar is killing communities. And if you think you're not addicted to it, just try to stop. You'll be walking around like Gator from Jungle Fever trying to get some sugar in about 3 days. And that's why you got to make sure that you stop the sugar. I'm sorry. I go off on tangents. I'm sorry.
No, that's funny. I had an incident last week where I was like fiending for sugar because I stopped drinking sodas, and it was just like it hit me, and I literally was going from door to door like, oh my God, the card swiper isn't working. And I need to I just need a nickel. And I was like, oh my God. I've told my friend this. I was walking around like Gator from Jungle Fever trying to get a nickel so I can get it out of the machine. Oh my gosh, you're so right. Okay, so we're going to look, I'm gonna get back on track with you. All right, fantastic. Well, we have some great comments. So I want to read those to you first. We have someone who said the truth check. Franklin Delano Williams saying speak truth about the truth check. We have D Hill said, okay, heading straight to the truthcheck.org for this training. We have Lorraine Braithwaite Hart, who is agreeing with everything that you all are saying. Very true, Dr. Hebert. We can't make everyone believe, so our focus will have to be in getting the correct info out. And oh, yeah, LaTroya Hester. Yes, Truth Check is brought to you by the Center for Black Health and Equity. Absolutely. And then, of course, people co-sign it on the sugar stuff. Now, Lorraine also had was saying something about the anti-vaxxers and how strong they are in terms of organizing and influencing legislators and things of that and people of that nature, and how that is posing a problem. What do you all think? I mean, obviously misinformation is one of the things, but what do you think is the greatest threat to empowering people with information about medical issues that impact our community, Black people? What do you think the greatest threat is? I'm sure you think it's misinformation to some extent, but what is the greatest threat to that? Is it the anti-vaxxers? Is it misinformation? Is it disinformation? Like, what should we, those of us who are on team, the truthcheck.org, what should we be doing in order to gird ourselves, as you say, Dr. Hebert, to engage these folks who are just doing everything they can really to kill us?
Delmonte,
yeah, let me go first, if you don't mind.
Sure.
you talked about Dr. Hebert. We're not going to tell you what to eat, right? We're going to give you the knife and fork. We're going to tell you how to use it. But you threw in there, you said, but wait a minute, but sugar is going to kill us, but salt is going to kill us. Now that's also truth. Now, what we would hope for folks to do is to go out and check that. If you don't believe it, go out and check and see what's happening to our communities because of some of these other issues that are happening. See what's happening because of salt. See what's happening because of sugar. See what's happening because of mentholated tobacco products. See how many African Americans are dying each year because of that. I was looking at something the other day on the news, and I look at the news. I truth check it, but I look at the news, and it was talking about with this Omicron and how many folks right now are in the hospital system because of COVID, and that 98% of those in the system because of COVID right now are unvaccinated. That was incredible. Now I don't know if that number 98 was right or not, but I do know, most of the folks that are in the system right now, in the hospital system, have not been vaccinated. I don't know what more data, I don't know what is more needed than to say, well, wait a minute, obviously the vaccines are working if the people that have the vaccines aren't in the systems and that those that don't have the vaccines are in the system. And so again, we have to continue to put out tools and resources like the truthcheck.org that can help you to discern truth from fiction. But at the same time, you need to put out information about sodium is killing Black people, sugar is killing Black people, not being vaccinated is killing Black people. You still have to put that information out there so that they can see. You still have to blow the bullhorn, and you have to continue to blow that bullhorn until it resonates, until some folks say, even if it's, not everybody, but until some folks say, well, yes, I need to do something to protect my family, to protect my household, because yes, this thing is killing, these different things are killing our folks, it's killing our people. So we got to blow the bullhorn.
Yeah. Now, I'll tell you this too, that what you said, Delmonte, makes perfect sense, because what someone who is a disinformation specialist will say, that story that you saw on the news was a lie. That story that you saw on the news, actually, the most people that are in the hospital actually have been vaccinated. And so when you have that person, because that person exists, then what do you do with that? Because you can't argue with that. If they say the CDC's data is lying, then at that point, that's a fringe person. That I would say more people in America do not believe that. That is a fringe person. But trying to get an anti-vaxxer, it takes about 100,000 vaxxers to change one anti-vaxxer back to a vaxxer. But it takes about one anti-vaxxer to change 100,000 vaxxers into an anti-vaxxer, because people inherently feel like that the government is harming them, or that something is being pulled over their eyes. And so I think the biggest, I'm going back to your question, the biggest problem that we're going to have that faces us across the board is being empowered. We have to feel empowered, not that our egos have to be in check, that we're in so much control. We have to be empowered so that we can actually know what is the truth and what is not the truth. And that empowerment can only come from education. We must be educated. We have to be educated. Like, for example, if I told you right now that a bowl of rice has as much sugar as a bowl of ice cream, okay? Most people would say that's 100% untrue. That's untrue. Rice doesn't have as much sugar as ice cream. It is untrue. You know why? Because rice has more sugar than ice cream. More sugar. You would never eat 2 bowls of ice cream for dinner, but you eat 2 bowls of rice and 5 chicken wings from the Chinese spot every night, thinking it's okay, right? So once again, you have to remember, it's not just that we have to be able to discern whether something is real or not. We also have to take into our minds and get educated about the stuff that we know is real. We have to be empowered to educate ourselves, and don't educate yourself on something that is not real. So you go to truthcheck.org, you see what's real, then you go back and then you re-educate yourself on the things that you need to re-educate on to save you and your family.
Now, thank you. Jay Williams is going to bring us to our last question, which is a good one. Great information. What is the best way to get it into our schools? You're talking about education. So who is the truthcheck.org for? You know, can anyone of any age get on it? Can my 6-year-old get on it? Do you have to be of a certain age? Do you have to, you know, of course you need access to the internet, but like, who is it for? Like, what's your targeted demographic and what is the optimal outcome of this initiative?
Well, we would hope that, if you've got young people in your house, that you walk them through the truthcheck.org because, yeah, we get misinformation and disinformation all the time, but they do too, especially if they have a phone. If they've got a phone, they're getting misinformation. They're getting disinformation. They're seeing things. I got a niece and she's like 21, 22 years old. And her whole life is on, when she's not working, she does work and she goes to school and that's good. But on her off time, it's TikTok. It's TikTok. And so I'll be honest, I've never been on TikTok. I don't even know what's there, but obviously it's great because she's on it all the time. And so if you've got a family and you can walk them through and go through some of these exercises together, and it's very interactive. I mean, it's extremely, an African-American developer put this together for us. And so it's entertaining, it's fun, walk them through it. And the outcome is that every time you see something, every time you see a headline like LaTroya put in there, you say, well, wait a minute, what is this story? Don't just scroll through the headlines. I know time is very precious and we're always busy. And so we just want to catch the headlines and keep on going. But stop. If something doesn't seem right, stop. Read the whole article, like Dr. Hebert says. Look at the bottom lines. Are there any retractions? Is there anything I need to circle and double back and check on? And so that, go through it with your family. It's open. So they're going to need it just like you are.
Yeah, and I would like to say before Dr. Hebert responds that most people only read 150 words if they do read the article. 150 words, where most articles on the web are between 350 and 750 words. Yeah. So you have to go, it's like go beyond the headline, but also go beyond the first sentence. Like you got to read the entire article, and it's okay to bookmark and come back later or what have you, but you want to read articles in their entirety. So that you have all of the information and you get to that part that Dr. Hebert was talking about, where it's like this study wasn't done on humans or what have you. It's not a clinical study and no doctors looked at it, like, so, I just wanted to put that out there. Like what you're saying, Delmonte, is accurate. What the viewers are saying is accurate. Most people do not read more than 150 words. Okay, Dr. Hebert, I'm gonna give you the last word before I close this out.
Well, one thing I do want to say is that one thing that the truthcheck.org also will do is teach you how to be media savvy. And the reason why and online savvy. And the reason why this is really important is because we know if you spend a lot of time online, it increases your risk of depression. And depression is a real big problem. I want my people that are out there listening, please don't let your children just hang on the internet all day. Please do not just sit on the internet all day because it increases depression. And I'm going to tell you why. You probably heard of an island called the Maldives, right? I've been to the Maldives, and the Maldives is a beautiful place. But guess what? When I go on Instagram and I see someone in the Maldives, I'm like, man, I could go tomorrow, but I sure wish I was there now. And I can go. So think about this. If you are a person that knows that you will probably never be able to go to the Maldives, how does that make you feel? If you know you're a kid and you see everybody around you wearing Gucci all day and you know that you can never do that, what does that make you feel like? It makes you feel worthless. It makes you feel depressed, and it makes you do things that you wouldn't normally do. That's why young people and people that have because of the internet now, we have huge depression because most of that stuff is not even real that you see. But the reality is that it's making you feel less than. It's making you feel like you don't belong, like you can't do what you need to do. And that is what's going to be the downfall of our community. Truthcheck.org is where you need to go so you can stay off the internet and get the information that you need that's reliable when you're actually on it.
Fantastic. Well, this has been a lively discussion. We had lots of participation from the audience. I want to thank Delmonte Jefferson of the Center for Black Health and Equity and Dr. Cora Hebert, who is an assistant professor at LSU, at Tulane, is chief medical officer all over the place, is doing his thing with the HBCUs as well. And of course, Black News, the Black News Channel. I'm so excited to have you here. I will encourage our readers, our viewers, please visit thetruthcheck.org. Please learn as much as you can about the COVID-19 vaccine. If you look at the data, it is wiping out, it is us, we, Black people, Latinx, and indigenous populations are the ones who are dying from it at the highest levels and the highest rates. And some folks are leaving whole families, you know, 7 children behind because both parents are being taken. So just really think about it and really go to thetruthcheck.org, thetruthcheck.org, and make sure you get the right information and learn how to make and discern information so that you can make the right decisions for you and your family. I'm Dr. Nsenga Burton for the Burton Wire and Black Press USA. I wish you a happy and healthy weekend. Wash your hands, wear your mask, and stay up. Love you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.